What if I told you, well, the future of warfare isn't, soldiers in trenches anymore. It's algorithms battling it out and like at lightning speed. Sounds crazy, right? Like science fiction. But in this deep dive, we're going to see how AI and autonomous warfare, well, it's blurring the lines between sci-fi and reality.
Mm-hmm.
We're diving into some excerpts from Fully Autonomous and Asymmetric Warfare in the Age of AI. And trust me, this isn't just about, killer robots.
Right.
Although we'll get to those. This is about AI and how it's changing, like fundamentally reshaping how wars are fought right now.
Absolutely. And I think a good place to start is by looking at how this type of warfare is, well, it's already playing out, right? Think about the conflict in Marikia. Drones, guided by algorithms, totally changed the game. They allowed smaller forces to take on these like larger, more traditional military.
Yeah, those news reports were like eye-opening to say the least.
Right.
And then there's like those autonomous naval vessels, patrolling the Straits of Trenton.
Yeah.
It's like we're living in a Tom Clancy novel.
It really is a real-world example of how AI is, blurring all these lines in asymmetric warfare. But it's not just about the hardware, right? It's the software, too. It's the intelligence behind these machines that's really changing things. Imagine, instead of a human, a commander making decisions on the battlefield based on their training, their gut, you have an AI system. This system is analyzing the entire battlefield in real time. Like it can process information from everywhere, satellites, drones, sensors on the ground, all at a speed no human could ever match. And then it can suggest, troop movements, identify targets, even predict enemy actions, all before they happen.
Wow.
This is intelligent warfare.
Right. It's like having a chess grandmaster, like whispering the best moves in your ear, but 1,000 times faster. It makes you wonder, though, how do those traditional rules of engagement, how do those even work when it's a machine interpreting them, in the heat of the moment?
Yeah, that's exactly the ethical and the strategic, well, it's the tightrope we're walking here. How do you program a machine to make these life or death decisions, especially when everything's changing so fast?
So let's unpack that a little bit. On one hand, we've got these like incredibly powerful AI systems that could actually make warfare more precise.
Right.
Minimizing civilian casualties, even in a war zone. The book even talks about, AI-guided drones, delivering aid after natural disasters, getting to areas where humans it would take too long,
Absolutely. And not just after natural disasters. Think about active conflict zones. The need to deliver aid quickly, safely, it's crucial. Studies have shown that AI-guided drones, operating autonomously, they can be significantly faster and more accurate in these situations.
Wow.
And that speed, that accuracy, it can make the difference between life and death.
So there's definitely like a humanitarian aspect to this technology, But then there's the flip side, the what ifs. The book talks about black box AI, and I gotta say, it's a bit unsettling.
Yeah, and rightfully so. Black box. It refers to the fact that we don't always understand, the why behind an AI's decision. These systems, they learn from tons of data, identifying patterns, making connections, things humans might miss. But the process isn't always transparent. Even the programmers who create these systems, they can't fully explain every single decision the AI makes.
So if something goes wrong, if an autonomous weapon it makes a mistake, who's accountable? Is it the programmers, the military commanders, or is it the AI itself?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And unfortunately, we don't have a clear answer. And that lack of transparency, it has huge implications, especially when you think about like legal accountability in warfare. And it gets even more concerning when you start to consider how AI could, well, shift the balance of global power.
Okay, hold that thought because I think that's a perfect place to pause. We'll be right back. Welcome back.
Before the break, we were getting into some of the global implications of AI, in warfare. And it sounds like this goes way beyond just like which country has the biggest weapons anymore.
Yeah, it really does. When you think about it, developing AI, sophisticated AI, it takes a lot. I mean, you need the data scientists, the computing power, not to mention tons of data to train these systems, right?
Right.
And that's something, well, that the big players, the ones on the world stage, they've got that in spades. But the scary thought is that, this technology, it could become more accessible.
So you're saying like smaller countries or even like non-state actors, they could get their hands on AI-powered weapon systems. That's a level playing field gone wrong. Yeah, it's a huge concern. Imagine like a scenario where terrorist organizations who, they kind of depend on asymmetric tactics.
Right.
They get access to AI that can, go through surveillance data, identify patterns of life, maybe even predict vulnerabilities. Pretty chilling thought.
Yeah, it is. That's where it feels like we need some serious, like, international cooperation and fast.
You would hope so, right?
Yeah.
The book talks about this urgent need for treaties, global regulations to prevent an AI arms race, but even getting everyone to agree on, like, what is an autonomous weapon? It's a huge challenge.
Right.
National interests, they often seem to, well, to be more important than these long-term global security concerns.
Yeah, it's always easier said than done, right? Working together, everybody's got their own agenda. But, kind of shifting gears here a bit, it's not just about drones and missiles, is it? The book also gets into how AI is being used, like, in counterterrorism. And I got to admit, some of this stuff is like straight out of Minority Report,
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We're talking algorithms analyzing massive amounts of data.
Right.
Communications, financial transactions, social media, you name it, to try and identify threats, maybe even predict attacks before they happen.
So instead of just reacting to events, we're using AI to get ahead of the curve. I mean, that's a whole different world.
It is, but it also brings up this whole other set of, ethical and legal questions, like how accurate are these predictive systems? What happens if an AI system, it flags someone as a potential threat based on bad data or biased algorithms?
Right. Right.
Do we arrest someone based on an algorithm's prediction? We're in uncharted territory here.
And what about, like, our privacy? I mean, if AI is always watching, looking at our digital footprints, does that mean, are we all suspects in some, like, never-ending investigation?
It's valid concern, and it really highlights this need for transparency and oversight,
Yeah.
If we're going to let AI play a part in counterterrorism, we have to make sure the safeguards are there to prevent abuse and to protect our civil liberties. It's a tough balance.
Definitely. A lot to think about. And I think this leads into something we haven't really talked about yet, and that's public perception. How do people feel about all of this? Are we all just, sleepwalking into this future where machines are making life or death decisions and we don't even realize it?
Public awareness is key. And honestly, it's an area where I think we need to do a lot more. The average person, they probably get their information about AI from science fiction movies.
Right.
And those don't usually paint a very realistic picture, do they?
No, it's all killer robots and rogue AIs taking over the world. Not exactly balanced.
Exactly. The reality, as we've been talking about, it's a lot more complicated. There are definitely risks, but there's also the potential for good. The challenge is, how do we have a nuanced conversation about something this complex when everything's fear and sensationalism?
So how do we change the narrative? It feels like such a massive problem. What can we even do?
That's a question. And it was one we'll get into right after the break, because it's not just up to, the governments and the tech companies to shape the future of AI. It's up to all of us.
So we've been really diving deep into this world of autonomous warfare, and I gotta say, it's a lot. Before the break, we were talking about how, to say the average person, someone like me, can even make a difference, because let's be real, all this talk about treaties and ethics, it feels pretty big, when you're just trying to get through the day.
All right, it's easy to feel that way. But think of it this way, public opinion, it's changed things before, big things. We've seen it with the environment, civil rights, all of it. The same ideas apply here.
So you're saying, like, don't underestimate the power of, a well-informed person.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the first step is, becoming informed. We live in a time where information, it's everywhere. Take the time to learn about AI, what it can do, what it can't do. There are so many great resources out there. Documentaries, podcasts like this one. There's even, online courses and stuff.
It's like learning a new language almost, right? You learn the basics, and then you can follow along, maybe even join the conversation.
Exactly. And once you have that knowledge, you'd be surprised. You start to see things in the news differently. You start asking those critical questions. Like, you see an article about some new AI weapon, right? Don't just focus on the cool tech stuff. Go deeper. Who's making this? What are the risks? Is there a human involved at all?
Okay, so we're doing our homework. We're asking the tough questions. What then? Do we, write letters to our politicians and stuff?
Like, if that's your style, go for it. But it doesn't have to be, that formal. Have conversations with your friends, your family, share what you're learning. You might be surprised how many people are actually interested in this stuff. They haven't really thought about it.
It's about, getting people thinking.
Yeah.
Right? Getting them to look at the news with a critical eye.
Exactly. And remember, social media, it can be really powerful for this. Share articles, have, thoughtful discussions online. The more we talk about it, the more normal it becomes.
Yeah.
Less intimidating.
And hopefully all that leads to action, right? Like demanding more transparency from our leaders or supporting organizations that are, working on making AI safer.
Exactly. We need to be involved.
Yeah.
Not just, going along with whatever we're told.
Speaking of being told what to think, the book talks about this idea of quantum computing and how it could completely change how powerful these autonomous weapons are. And I gotta be honest, that's where my brain starts to short circuit.
It's a lot to wrap your head around. Imagine a chess game, but your opponent can suddenly see 1,000 moves ahead. That's the kind of edge quantum computing could give to these weapon systems.
Okay, I'm getting chills just thinking about it. That feels like, I don't know, a whole other level, even beyond everything we've been talking about.
It is. But it also shows why these conversations we're having are so important. We need to figure out the ethics, the rules, now while it's still early. If we wait until these quantum weapons are real, it might be too late.
It's like that saying, right? The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now.
Exactly. We're at a turning point. The choices we make about AI now, they'll affect, everything that comes after us.
So to kind of bring it all together, this world of autonomous warfare, it's complicated, things are changing fast, and there's both good and bad that can come from it. But, one thing is clear. We can't just, sit here and hope for the best.
We need to learn. We need to be involved, and we need to ask the tough questions. Because at the end of the day, the future of warfare, it's not something that just happens to us. It's something we shape with what we know, with the choices we make, with everything we do.
So dive into those resources, talk to people, and don't be afraid to, speak your mind. The future's listening. And that's a wrap on this deep dive. Thanks for joining us on this one.